Hi, I'm Jed Sims, the founder of Totally Optimized Projects and creator of Top. Today I want to talk to you about the impact of business outcomes on projects. Now, when projects are happening, or especially when they're being set up and when they're being discussed, people know what they're going to do. They know what they're going to deliver. They can talk about, they're going to take this group, we're going to teach them this, we're going to provide this mechanisms and this way of doing things, but they don't actually define the business outcomes, the measures of success. What are we really trying to do? For example, recently a project manager, when we were talking about business outcomes, said, the outcome for this particular project's absolutely clear. It is that we're developing a quality manual. And when we deliver the quality manual, that's the outcome. No, it's not. Absolutely no, it's not. And therein is the real problem. The outcome from a quality manual exercise is that you've actually made a difference to the quality of the outputs of that area. Otherwise, it's just shelfware. Yes, you can produce a quality manual, but unless it is actually used and improves the quality of what is being produced, you haven't succeeded. Just having a manual that everybody ignores is useless. It's a waste of money. But this difference between the production of the manual and its use to improve quality is critical to the success of projects. We'll talk about this more shortly, but even if you think in just this case, how you develop the manual will depend on how it's going to be used by the people who are going to use it to improve the quality of the goods and services sold. So knowing that you really actually got to improve the quality of the outputs means that it changes what you're going to produce, how you're going to produce it, the way that people are going to use it, and so on. So when you define your business outcomes, you change the nature of the project. When we talk about business outcomes to many project managers, the younger, less experienced project managers tend to say, can't see any difference. The older, more experienced project managers say, boy, that would change how I manage the project. So let's just give you a framework for thinking about this, and then we'll use that framework later to illustrate the point, hopefully very forcefully. This is the top 7 essential elements model, which basically says you need to have all of these 7 elements existing in your project for it to be successful. And there's a whole series of presentations on this, which we won't go into here. So I'll take you through it very briefly. So the key is that you start with the desired business outcomes. Where are you trying to get to? What does success look like? What are you trying to achieve? What are the business as usual end states that will exist when you have finished and everything is working just right? And as I said at the beginning, though these outcomes are normally not defined. So people are busy defining what the project's going to do and how we're going to do it and the timeline and the budget and all these sort of things, but they've never actually defined the business outcomes. And the importance of that and the impact we'll come to in a minute. When you've defined your outcomes, you can then look at your current state in detail, and then you can say, well, if that's where we are, that's where we're going to get to, here are the business that change activities required to get there, and here are the benefits and value of getting there. So this defines where we are, what we've got to do, where we've got to get to, and the benefits and value of getting there. Now, just an important point in passing. That top line from business current state, business change activities, business outcomes, and business benefits are normally not existing in most projects. As you'll see later, it's normally deficient. Bits of it may be there, but on the whole, that whole line, which is where you should start, is missing. Then, when you've defined your business outcomes, activities, and value, then you can define the project outcomes as a subset. So if I'm going to deliver an outcome of all service calls are invoiced within 24 hours, the project outcome might be all service invoices are invoiced within 5 days. So that's a subset. We say, well, if we're going to do this invoicing in 5 days, these are the activities that the project needs to do, which leaves some for the business still to do, and these are the immediate benefits and value that can come out of delivering a 5-day invoicing process. The additional benefits that come from moving that from 5 days to 24 hours remain in the business. So here's the model. It's based on the top value equation. So this helps you visualize the components you need, the elements you need to have a successful project. And as I said earlier, unfortunately, it looks most likely like this in most organizations and on most projects. We all know what we're going to do with the project change activities. We think we know the current state. The outcomes are a bit vague, and we mainly talk in terms of outputs and the benefits. We're not allowed to talk about benefits if we're talking about projects. So we're going to use this model to illustrate the importance of business outcomes to projects. But before we do that, I might just explain who I am. My name is Jed Sims, and I founded TOP in 1994 when I left the Boston Consulting Group. I have over 40 years of strategy execution and value delivery experience, and my life sort of changed one day when I got a phone call from the executive assistant of the CEO who said he wants to see you now and he's livid, which, as any executive listening to this would know, is a call you never want to receive. So rushed down there wondering either what I'd done or not done, and was subjected to a tirade on IT in general, but particularly the lack of results from IT projects. I said, I totally agree, Bill, but IT doesn't report to me. He said it does now. And therefore I became accountable for all the projects in the bank. I already had strategy and operational and improvement projects, mergers and acquisitions. Now I had IT as well. So I started looking and saying, well, why do we get such poor results from projects? This is not an IT issue. It's universal to projects, and it's not an Australian or a banking issue. It's universal again. So something fundamental must be wrong. We've got some of the brightest people on the planet working on projects, and yet we don't get the results and benefits that we want. So I decided to challenge orthodoxy and rethink how should we go about projects from a business strategy point of view. Shortly after, I was invited to join the Boston Consulting Group as a regional IT strategist, and there I was involved in worldwide research into where does the value go on projects? What are the drivers and destroyers of value? And through this work, I discovered a bridge between strategy and results. What needs to happen between the bright idea, the intent, the goal, and actually getting there? And how do projects fit in? And over the last 20 years, I've developed and packaged the expertise for you in a product called TOP. So 40 years of experience, good and bad, success and failure, but the last 20 years on documenting how do you actually ensure success. Now, let's go back to the 7 elements, but this time looking at it from the point of view of publishing a magazine. Now, I'm sure all of us could publish a magazine. Let's assume that in this case it's a monthly magazine. So what you've got to do, if you look at this from a project point of view, is get the magazine out each month. That's a project in itself. Each month you have another project called next month's issue. And anyone who's tried to get hold of an editor of a monthly magazine in the 2 or 3 days before it has to go to the printers knows that it's just like any other project with a mad panic rush at the end. So let's look at how you go about it and how you need to go about it. So you have a current state. In the area that you're writing about, let's There are trends, there's news, there's developments, innovations, special events coming up, all possible sources of topics for the magazine. But you also have a magazine's size and style and number of readers and frequency of publication and cost of publication. If some are glossy, high quality magazines, others are far cheaper to produce. Some are 40 pages, some are 140 pages. So we have a current size, and normally as an editor you'll be told what size magazine you're allowed to produce next month. And that will be driven to some extent by things like advertising revenue. So, right, it's beginning of the month, so now we've got to determine a theme, get the articles written, the photos shot, the illustrations done, the design laid out, and then we can send it to the printers. Fine, okay, any good project manager can organise that to be done. And so, in terms of the desired project outcomes, the magazine is printed and distributed, and in terms of the benefits and value of the publication, commitments are met. So if we've told the advertisers that it will go out each month, we've met that, and for people who have subscribed, we've met that publication commitment too. So this is the project view of the world. So we have the current state, we do all these activities, we print the magazine, and hey presto, we met our commitments, tick, let's all go off to the pub and celebrate. But this is only a small part of the story. Because as you can see, the upper business line is missing at the moment. What happens when we just add those elements? So obviously, the business change activities, we need to keep abreast of the trends and identify areas of interest. So we can't just produce a magazine. We've actually got to produce a magazine that people want to read. Because if we don't produce a magazine that people want to read, then we have failed. People won't subscribe to a magazine or advertise in a magazine that isn't read. So in addition to just the project element of getting the magazine out, there's the whole another layer which says it's not a matter of getting the magazine out, it's getting out a magazine containing content in a format that the readers will find interesting enough to read and the advertisers will see as valuable enough to spend dollars advertising in. Otherwise, the readers won't renew their subscriptions, the advertisers won't advertise, and we don't have a magazine. So, we don't just run the magazine just for the money. Money is a critical element, but we also are doing it as a service. If there wasn't a market for what we're doing, again, there would be no magazine. So once we add the business line to this whole process of publishing a magazine, it colours and changes the project line, because we no longer can just produce a magazine, we have to produce the right magazine in the right format. Certain types of audiences like their information laid out in different ways, so it's got to be the right format. It's got to be the right content. So it's not just any content, but very specific content. This is the critical aspect of business outcomes. If you don't have the top line, then you can just produce any old rubbish and call it as a magazine and send it out, tick, I've completed my task. But once we put the business elements into this diagram, then you can see that it colours the whole thing. Success is not getting the magazine printed and distributed, but getting the right magazine printed and distributed that will be read, be found interesting and relevant. That's the key. It's got to be read and be found interesting and relevant. And if the editor isn't producing those sort of magazines, they've got to go. Because you just won't have one, because the benefits and value, the subscriptions and advertising will dry up. So hopefully you've got the idea of exactly how powerful and what a difference the business outcomes can make to a process. The other thing they do is bring clarity, specificity and measurability. Here we have a real project, a B2B project, that was struggling to get approval, and here were the project objectives straight out of the business case. Streamlined order invoicing processes end-to-end, ability to track action and reduce claims, faster resolution of claims, ability to track order and payment status at all times. Yeah, but what does that really mean? How are we going to measure that? What does streamlined order invoicing processes end-to-end mean? So we got them to define their desired business outcomes for this project, and these are an extract from that. So each of these is measurable. Our customers' orders are correct with the right stock item, quantity and price based on a shared, synchronized price catalogue. Are they, aren't they? If they're not correct, we failed. If they're not based on a shared, synchronized price catalogue, we failed. Now, we may not have failed completely, but we may have compromised the results such that at least some of the benefits will have been diminished. And sometimes it's the major benefits that have been diminished. The second outcome, customer claims returns, result from physical damage only. Claims for incorrect product, wrong quantity, obsolete stock, and other errors disappear. And this comes from the first one, but this was worth around about $70 million to this organisation. On the left, we've got ability to track action and reduce claims. On the right, we've actually now starting to define the consequence of the changes we're going to make to the way that we deal with our customers and the way that they order on us. That will generate a huge saving for this organisation. Customer claims or potential claims are visible and can be resolved, actioned and authorised within 48 hours. So faster resolution of claims, what does that mean? 1 day faster, 1 week faster? Here we've got 48 hours. We're going to, put processes in place. That means as soon as there's a problem, we know about it, we can resolve it, fix it. This was worth many dollars. And finally, we can track an order through all steps between the customer and us, from order issue to order payment. Can we or can't we? We can measure this. If we can't track it all the way through, then we have compromised our benefits. So I think you would agree that the right-hand side, the blue text, is far more specific and measurable than the left-hand side. But most projects start and go forward with the project objectives. In fact, in many business cases and project plans, there is a title, Project Objectives. Objectives are nice, they're great, but they're not specific, they're not clear, and they're certainly not measurable. You need to convert them into desired business outcomes so you know exactly what you're trying to do. Each one of those outcomes is measurable by a yes/no answered question. Do we or don't we? Can we or can't we? Have we or haven't we? If we haven't, or we can't, or we don't, then we have compromised our benefits. So it makes measuring success very clear and very easy, and everyone knows what those outcomes mean. You don't need to be in that particular industry. So these are the power and the difference that business outcomes make. And when we look at the bottom line, when the business case was originally done, the identified benefits value were about $6 million. After they went through this process, the identified benefits value was $72 million. A huge difference. Same project, same requirement, vastly different value to the business because they now knew what they were going to do. And the process of defining these desired business outcomes identify huge areas where they could leverage this opportunity to get real value, which is why it moved from 6 to 72 million. It's a thinking process that changes the whole project. When you define your true business outcomes, it changes how you approach, deliver and measure your project, increases the values dramatically, makes it clear to everyone what you're trying to do. It really is that simple to improve the value and specificity of your projects.